Okay, hello and welcome. It is 1:30, so we'll get going. I know there will be quite a few more people joining us along the way. Just a reminder, if you could please mute your video, turn off your video as well as mute your mic, that would definitely help us save the bandwidth to make sure we have a great connection the whole way. Yeah, welcome. 1:30, it's our session on essentially Google Classroom Basics and Meet Basics. So we're going to go over that. This is a repeat session of our very first PD on Tuesday. So if you didn't have an opportunity to see that, we will cover everything as well. You might have just noticed that Carrie put a welcome chat together. Please use the chat for asking questions. We did learn quite a bit from our first session on Tuesday, so we will try to answer as many questions as we can going through that. Carrie and myself will be going through the chat and answering as Chandra is kind of doing the presenting. But I guess a little bit about us and our team. I'm Mark Obey. I'm the coordinator of learning services for educational technology, among a few other portfolios, but this is one that's keeping me up and busy. As well as we have Carrie Lorenz, who is the ET consultant, as well as Chandra Goodmanson, who is cyber school actually, but she's been kind of the face of all of our Google videos, as well as a huge help to us along the way. So I want to mention this is being recorded. You'll notice there's a record button. I will have this up on our YouTube page after the session is over. It usually takes a few hours for everything to render and get up. You may have already participated in our previous sessions. We had Cyber School talking about Moodle, and Moodle is an amazing resource, especially if you're bringing them into Google Classroom or just using them on their own as hybrids. We also had our session on how to close out your Google Classroom for the end of the year and maybe some more advanced engagement tools. But yeah, as I mentioned, this is our last PD session. Many of you, I'm sure, are having a sigh of relief. And again, everything with our resources can be found online with the GSCS Google Resource Hub, as well as the YouTube page. So I would definitely say check out the YouTube page. Anytime we have a new video, we are uploading that and sharing that as best as possible. So I think that's enough from me. We will pass it over to Chandra, and as I mentioned, Carrie and I will be answering questions, and also take a look. Yeah, we do have another session for growing in knowledge. Depending on what happens in the next couple of weeks or month, that may change. So just know that we're here to support educational technology, among many other things. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. So today we're just going to go through the basics of setting up a Google Classroom. If you've done this before, this is all going to be very familiar to you, but if you have never set up a Google Classroom, this will be perfect. So I'm going to just share my screen over. And just a reminder to make sure that your video is off by clicking on that video icon at the bottom of your Meet, as well as your mic. So as we begin, I'm going to start in a Google Chrome browser. So when you go into Google Chrome, the icon looks like this. The first thing you want to do is to make sure that you are logged in with your GSCS credentials. If you have ever logged into a Gmail account, it will most likely default to that. You need to be very aware that you are logged in with your GSCS credentials. This will allow you different permissions into various things, and if you're logged in with your Gmail, you're going to have a very difficult time. Once you are logged in and that sync is on, you can then go to the portal. Within our portal, you can see that there is the Google Apps icon. When I click on this icon, I'm brought to a bunch of different apps that you have access to within the division. So you can see that Google Classroom is there, the calendar, there is your Google Drive. If you're familiar with OneDrive, it's the same thing, only the Google product. As well as there are two kind of options here, Google Hangouts and Google Chat. and then Meet. Meet is always the option that you want to use. Google Hangouts was basically the original, and now they are moving towards Meet, and this is the platform that they are supporting. So always going to your Meet tab here, not the Hangouts. We're going to start in the classroom. So by clicking that icon, you are brought to a classroom homepage. Notice that because I was logged in with my Chrome browser, it immediately brought me to a homepage without me having to log in again. Now, if you were a first-time user, you would have to click that you are a teacher, and then you would be brought to a blank screen here, and there would most likely be a little pop-up bubble saying this is how you create or join a class. This would look the exact same for a student. Once they were logged in and they went to this homepage, they would then see that plus button. If you had added them with an email, they would see the class here. However, if you're adding them using a code, which we will all explain, they would just enter it with this plus button here. So creating a class, you're just going to press exactly that, create a class. You need to name the class. And then you can press the create button. This will take a few seconds to generate the classroom, and then it will pop up as your first classroom over here. So if I go back to that classes tab, you can see there it is, that test class. Going into the classroom, I have a stream here, and this is where you would post any notifications to your students. You could think of it kind of like a Facebook stream where the most recent thing pops up at the top, and you eventually could scroll through and find out a log of any communication you have had. So you can send out messages to students here, to your whole class. You could post materials or links on here, reminders. It is your basic homepage. With that being said, we're going to go over into the settings option, because before we add students to our classroom, we always want to make sure that our settings are set so that students can do minimal damage upon entering. What I mean by that is Google sets it to automatically allow students to post and comment on that stream that I just showed you. So if students were entering your classroom, they would be able to start writing on that stream. Other students could comment back to them. And if you haven't had a chance to teach digital citizenship yet, that could be problematic. So we would use that drop-down menu to instead choose that students can only comment or only teachers can post or comment. Now the teachers one, obviously only you can post or comment to anything on that stream. The students can only comment just means that whatever you post on that stream, they can comment underneath of it. This is very handy if they're asking questions about something that you have posted. So I normally like to choose that option. You can also see while I'm here that I have a few other options such as Classwork on the stream. So Classwork on the stream means that anytime you post an assignment in your Classwork tab, it'll automatically populate to your stream. So it'll give a banner notification in the stream that you've posted a new assignment. You can have a condensed notification for the assignment, or you could have it the full assignment with all the attached files and details show on that stream, or you could hide the notifications for Classwork. It depends on how you want to be communicating with your students. Students will get a notification that you have created an assignment. It'll go to their email, or if they have the app, it'll pop up on their phone or iPad. However, if you do hide notifications, it's just not going to show up in the stream. So if you only want to use the stream for communicating with students, then you would turn that to hide notifications for Classwork. If you want your Classwork assignments to be showing up, then you can choose one of those options as well. It's a little bit flexible on how you want to set up your classroom. The next option that you would see here would be the Meet. So Meet is now built right into Google Classroom. This means that you can click on a link within your classroom with your students and be brought to a Meet page without having to set it up on Calendar or in a different tab. It's immediate. It brings everyone to the same page. When you press that Generate Meet link, it'll generate a link for you that is specific to your classroom. I have it visible to students, which means that it is displayed in the top of my classroom on any page that I'm on. I will show you this when we go back to our pages. But basically, a student cannot go into this Meet without you. As the teacher, you need to start the Meet first by clicking on that link, and then students are able to join. If you do not start that meeting first, it's of no danger to have in your classroom because students cannot go in there without you. Saving these changes, we will now see that the Meet link is up in this corner. So if you are using an iPad or a phone, just keep in mind your students are only going to see that little icon there. They will not see the full link. You will also see here that you have an upcoming work section. So if you have assigned work to your students and put due dates on it, this will be a little reminder tab for them as to what is coming up. You can also change the theme of your classroom here. So if you don't like how it looks, you can upload your own picture or you can choose something else and it will change the colors of your class. Going over to People. So in this People tab, this is where we add in our students and other teachers. Adding in teachers basically just allows you to collaborate with teachers. So they have the same access to any assignment that you post, or you have access to any assignment that they post if you are both teachers in a classroom. I believe you can have up to 25 teachers within a classroom. Beyond that, it is at capacity. Students are a little different. Students enter the classroom by using a class code. So with a teacher, I could simply put in an email address, press that invite button, and now I can see that Carrie is invited. I know I got her email address correct because her name appeared. With a student, you could go through the same process. You could click that plus button and add each of their student numbers at gscs.ca, or you could use this code with them, send out an email with that code, and just ask them to log into classroom.google.com, use the code to join the classroom. This will only work with their GSCS email accounts. So making sure that you send out our student video on how to log into Google Classroom if you can't teach them in person would be important. Going back over to our Classwork tab now. So in Classwork is kind of how you organize your classroom with any assignments or quizzes, topics that you want. This is obviously a blank classroom here. You can see that I have the Create button at the top, and this is where I can choose what I want to create. If I want to, what I would suggest would be to start with topics. So many teachers organize their classroom in different ways. Some teachers like to include a little emoji representing something for each different topic, then maybe including the name of the unit you are doing. Some teachers like to do weeks and then drag it out of the weeks after. It's really dependent on what you want your class to look like. But once you have those topics, you can then populate it with assignments, quizzes, questions, or material. If I go into assignments, it brings me to a page where I can title my assignment, leave instructions for my students, which if we are completely online need to be quite detailed, And then I have an add button over here where I can add in links, files from my Google Drive, files from my computer, or even search YouTube directly. If I search YouTube like that, I can click on a video, press add, and now my students are able to watch it right within the classroom. As well, it will have no ads in it because Google owns YouTube and it's being used for an educational purpose. So this will automatically take out your ads, which is really nice. Again, I can go into my Google Drive. I can add in any resources that I want, potentially a slides, and maybe even a document. What I need to keep in mind with this is that I really want to make sure that I'm using Google Apps. By that, I'm referring to Google Slides, Google Docs, not Microsoft Word, and not PDFs. The reason why is because the end user experience is very different. If you post using Google Docs or Google Slides, you have a lot more options, such as this drop-down menu, which allows you to make a copy for each student. That would mean that each student would receive their own copy of this blank art slide. So it would say the student name and then blank art slide. They would be able to click on it and edit it themselves, automatically saving to their own drive. Over here, the same thing with that document. I could choose that students can only view the file, or that students could edit the file, which means my entire class is editing one document. So it's a live edit altogether if you choose that option. Or again, I could make a copy for each student. Moving over to the right, you can see that I can change a points system. I don't need to add a grade if I don't want to. However, I can make it out of whatever I need to. I can also add a due date and a topic. If I want to, I'm also able to create a rubric right here within the assignment. This would let me mark it on the side when students hand in an assignment, but if I don't want to go through the work of creating a rubric on Google, because I already have one made up, what I would suggest would be to add in your rubric as an attachment, and then simply to copy that rubric and paste it at the bottom of student work. Then you can just highlight the sections of the rubric that they got and put in a final points value if you need to on the side. But if I use this rubric option, you click and you can press create rubric. You can give different criterion, the point system, and then you can just use the plus buttons to add in the different leveled points and descriptions here. Then you can add new sections and do it all over again. Now I do have an example of one. Once you have made them, you can use your different rubrics. And if I click on that, this is what one would look like. However, I did not put in any details. As you can see, it just says trial. Lastly, in an assignment, I would then use this drop-down menu to choose what class or classes I want to send this out to. And then you could use this drop-down menu to choose if you're sending it to all students or individual students. So if I select more than one class, I would be able to, if I was only in one class that had students in it, choose individual students to select it or assign it out to. Pressing that assign button then makes it go live. However, I did have a drop-down menu here. If I were to have clicked on that drop-down menu, I would have been able to save it as a draft for a later date or schedule it to go out at a different time. Again, using that create button, we can see that there is also a quiz assignment option. Now, the difference between a quiz assignment and an assignment is simply that within a quiz assignment, it will generate a new forms document for you versus a regular assignment. You could still use it as a quiz, but you would just need to import your own forms document that you had already made. So I'm going to click on that quiz assignment. You can see that it has now created a forms document for me. I can click on that, and now I can edit this form, changing the name of it, maybe adding a description, and then adding in any options that I want. They can be multiple choice, they could be short answer, paragraph answer. You can put in videos in here, you could put in images, lots of different ways. You can see you have that menu here on the side. And just by clicking this, you can add in a lot of other options too. You do have the option to have an answer key with this and to make each answer required or not, each question required or not. Now, when you use the answer key, it is pretty seamless for multiple choice. However, in short answer, it will look for exact spelling of answers. So exact spelling, capitalization, everything needs to be perfect. Otherwise, it will mark the student wrong. So I would not suggest using a self-graded quiz for short answer questions. I would only suggest using it for multiple choice. When you would hand this out to students, you would then have to go to the Responses tab to see any responses that students made. But that can be a little difficult if you don't make the first question, what is your name? So I would always suggest making the first question a short answer and just saying, what is your first and last name? And getting the students to put it in and making sure that it is a required answer. A few other things here at the top, you can customize the theme, changing the colors, or even choosing an image that you want to put up there. You can also preview your quiz in a student view, so this is what the student would see. And then a few other settings options. In the settings options, you can choose to collect student emails, which I like to do. However, you don't need to as long as you have their name on there. You can decide if you want to limit the response to only one, or if you want students to be able to go in multiple times in their quiz. And then you have releasing grades immediately if it's self-graded or later, as well as what the respondents can see. So if you are releasing grades immediately and you have it so that respondents can see their correct answers, then you would want that clicked. But keep in mind, if you are letting students go in more than once and you have correct answers on, that means the first time the student goes in, as they submit their quiz, they will then have the entire answer key of the quiz and be able to go back in there and put in the right answers. So you probably don't want to have that clicked. Again, these are all very general, brief, going through each of these little assignments and things, but we do have YouTube videos that are a little more in depth as to how to do this. Pressing that create button again, I have a question option. So within Google Classroom, anytime a student submits something to you, you are the only one, you and any other teachers in the classroom are the only ones who can actually see their work. Students cannot see each other's work, it is all private, but this question option allows you to kind of have a discussion with your class. You can ask a question here, give any instructions, add in anything you need to, and then students can reply to each other, and you can turn on if you want them to be able to edit their answers as well. I don't know if you guys heard that, but there are people working on the roof right outside of us who decided to bang on the window. Anyways, so the question option is kind of a little brief discussion that you would have with your students. It just creates that collaboration within that classroom. Next up, we have material. Material is exactly how it sounds. It's just an area where you can go in and add in any materials that you might use throughout your year or even for a certain subject. Things like editing sheets. Like I know I use a COPS editing sheet with my students before they hand in any written work. So I would add that in there. Maybe some teachers would add in multiplication tables, different things like that. Periodic table. Yep. You can also see at the top here that I have a class drive folder. So how Google works is anything you create within this classroom or any classroom, it actually stores itself in your own private class drive. This means that students also have a class drive, but it is stored with only their work. If I click on this, I'm able to see any work that I already created within the classroom. If I were to have students who would have completed some work for me, I would be able to click on the folder of an assignment and their work would be in here with their name attached. So if a student ever says they lost their work, you can go in, you can see any documents that they started creating or that you had attached for them. As well, they have that drive where they can go in and they can see themselves if they lost their work. It won't actually delete on them. Lastly, you have a reuse post option. You can click on this and you can reuse any post that you have ever created within any classroom. As you notice, it is taking a little bit of time to generate for me. That's because this year I have been added to lots and lots of different Google Classrooms. And so it's trying to bring all of those classrooms up for me to see those posts. I'm not going to wait for that to happen. And our last tab at the top is grades. Now I don't have any students in here, so you can't see what this looks like, but I will go into a different class so you can take a look. Okay, so again, this is what a stream would look like if you were communicating with students. You can see that in this section here, I chose to only communicate with one student and they were writing back to me. In other parts, I was writing out to my entire class. When I go to that Classwork tab, again, I had organized it in weeks, and when my week was done, I could then take the file and drag it to the tab it belonged in. I use little icons here, and then again gave the unit title. And going over to grades, I now have a grade book. So I can see students who have handed stuff in. When I return the work, their mark appears there. There's a lot of commotion going on in front of us. But using the three dots here, I can view any work that they had submitted to me, or I can press that return button if I needed to return one of their assignments. When you are in an assignment though, I'm trying to think of when that maybe people did. If I'm in an assignment, this is what it would look like. When I click that assignment, I can see who it's all assigned to, and maybe any attachments that they already had attached would appear here. I would also have a menu where I'd be able to see students who had turned it in, and another one would appear if I had marked something, and then I could click on that. Any questions?
Classwork, yeah. Question going back to the Classwork tab, and just where it says Google Calendar at the top. Can you touch on the calendar? And does it apply to just that class or all classes?
So within your Google Calendar, you can see here at the top that if I click on it, I'm brought to a calendar, and as you can see, I have all my classes in a different color. So it actually just generates, a new class color for each classroom you're in. So if you're posting assignments and they have due dates on them, it would appear in this calendar. Students would be able to see that. If you wanted to schedule, let's say, theme days in this calendar, again, students would be able to see it, but they would not be able to see any other calendar appointment that you had here. Hopefully that answers it.
The calendar just like that.
Yep.
I think so.
Okay. So, and Stacy, yeah, if you wanted to schedule something in your calendar, like a theme day or no school that day or something, you could actually click it to be sent out to all of your classes if you wanted that same memo to go to all classes and not just one. That is the basics of our creating a Google Classroom. Before we move on to Google Meet, does anyone have any questions? Can you generate a printout of missing assignments? Okay, so one thing that we should note that I didn't touch on is actually how to add in guardians. So you can see here that there is an Invite Guardians tab beside the student name. When you click this, you would put in the parent email, and what it would do is it would prompt that parent in an email to create a Gmail account if they didn't already have one. So Google Classroom requires the user to have a Gmail account. It would lead parents through how to use that, but then you would see the parent name would be there. And you can turn on Guardian Summaries. Guardian Summaries send the parents an email weekly of anything that had been assigned to their child, any upcoming due dates, as well as anything that had not yet been handed in by their child. So any missing assignments would constantly email the parents, I do believe daily, until their child turns in that assignment. I know some of the teachers here struggled with that a bit because students were going in and just pressing the turn in button without turning any product in, just because they wanted the reminders to stop for their parents or for them as well, because it sends out to the student as well. But a printout of missing assignments, you can go to grades and you can click on the student and go to this turned in, returned, or missing tab. And here, if they had a bunch of assignments missing, you could actually just select it or take a screenshot of it and send it out to the parent and say, this is a list of all the things your child has not handed in. You can also, if you want, so if you go into an assignment and you click on that settings button, you can download all grades as a CSV. So it basically prints like a big sheet out of any grades within your Google Classroom, or just these grades from this assignment. So if you're ever looking to print that grade book, that is how you do it as well. Any other questions? Mine doesn't either. Okay. So it must not be. All right.
Shifting gears to Google.
Yes, we are going to go into Google Meet. So, as I said earlier, the Meet link for your classroom is right at the top here. I would always suggest using this Google Meet link to meet with your students. However, if you're meeting with other individuals and need to create your own, you can go through the portal by clicking on that Google Apps icon and going to the Meet page here, or you could open a new tab and go to meet.google.com. You're then brought to this home page One more thing to make sure of, again, make sure you are logged in with your GSCS credentials here. And then you can press that join or start a meeting. Now, you can join a meeting with a code like you did today. You all typed in EdTechPD and were brought to our meeting. This will only work for GSCS email accounts. If you are using a personal Gmail, you would not have been able to even find that meeting with a code. However, you could name it something random, like maybe your name, be brought to a meeting, and then you could use this information to send out to students as a link. So if you were trying to meet even with parents and unsure of any email they would be using, just by sending them a link, they could join. But if you were meeting with other teachers, you could use that unique code. There was also a number there. You can call in. Obviously, you don't get the visuals, but you would get that number, or that audio, sorry. Taking a tour around the rest of it. So I can see there are 3 dots here. When I bring this up, I have an option to record the meeting like Mark is right now. You can see in our meeting, there's that little record up at the top. If you are going to record a meeting you are in, what you would do would be to first make sure that all students have their cameras off, because you can't record student faces. Beyond that, you're safe to record if you're just giving a lesson to students without video on. This would save to your Google Drive, and you would then be able to take it and put it within your Google Classroom. You can also change your layout here. I can choose to have it tiled, which will show up to 16 participants. Sidebar highlights the person speaking and shows other participants on the side, or spotlight shows only the person speaking. There is an option to make this full screen, to turn on captions, or to go into settings and change your audio and video. So you can choose what microphone you are going to use, as well as different speakers if you're using headphones, and same thing with your video. The turn on captions option is also right here. When I click it, I can then see that maybe I can see it. Oh, my mic's off. Now I can see that anything I say will be typed out at the bottom. My name is attached to it as well, so if I had multiple students in the group and I was recording and I wanted a log of what everyone was saying, this would be a great way. Or if I had anyone who was hearing impaired, then you would turn on those captions. Each student would need to do it themselves, and it would appear at the bottom. Okay, moving to the bottom, you saw how I turned my camera off. I can also turn my mic off here or hang up the call. Moving to the top, I have a few extensions here. So you will not see this grid option if you don't have the grid view. I have installed a grid view extension which allows me to see all participants within a meeting at once. However, this year it caused us a few problems as Meet was updating very rapidly, as well as Google Chrome. So any extension you install is actually created by a third-party individual. So when Chrome or Meet or whatever device you're using that extension with updates, it can cause glitches.
Just have to uninstall and reinstall.
Yeah, you just have to uninstall it and reinstall it. So these are extensions here at the top. If I right-click, I can actually remove it from my Chrome, just like that. And then I could go to the Chrome Web Store to reinstall it.
Show the Classroom extension.
So just by going to Web Store, clicking the Chrome Web Store, and that one was a grid view for Meet. And I just pressed Add to Chrome, and then I was able to turn it on and off within my Meet. I also have a participants icon here, which allows me to see any participant in the meeting, and the chat icon, which shows the full chat of the meeting. If you exit the meeting and join back in, it will be gone. In the participants icon, if I were to have started this group here, what I would be able to do would be to click on an individual and use this button here to remove them from the meeting. This is important to know because you want to make sure that all students are out of a meeting before you exit the meeting. So as a teacher, please make sure that all students are out of your meeting. If they are not leaving and they're being difficult, use that button to remove them, and then you can end your meeting. Otherwise, it is an unsupervised place that students can be. All right, lastly, pardon?
Tab resize?
Yeah, lastly, I have one more extension here that I think most people should install. It's called the Tab Resize Tool, and when I click it, I'm able to have two side-by-side tabs. So if I was teaching something to my students, I could have it here on the side, as well as my Meet with my chat pulled up. And that way students could be asking me questions as I'm going through a document or whatever else with them. We do have a video for that as well on our YouTube page. You can watch how to install that and encourage students to install it as well, so that when you're in a meeting with them, they can see two things at once without multiple monitors. Another great extension here is that classroom extension one. I can click it at any time and be brought to any one of my classrooms, or send out a link directly to the page that I'm on to my students by simply clicking on the class I want to send it to and pressing that push button. I could also make it an assignment, ask a question, or make it an announcement, all within that little extension tab. Any other extensions that I'm missing?
No, I think those three are the most reliable ones.
Do we have any questions about Google Meet?
Answering kind of as we go. So it's about extensions, which we just covered. No, I think Mark's been on it.
Awesome. Okay, so those are the very basics of Google Meet and Google Classroom. Again, please make sure if you are using Google Meet that you always make your students leave the meeting first before exiting it. We always want to minimize where students are able to chat unsupervised with each other. And as long as they're exiting the Meet first, then we take that option away within Google.
One question about, can you show the Incognito browser and when it would be useful?
So a question about using the Incognito browser. Basically, I went through a few times here how important it is to be logged in with that GSCS account. If your student is using a home computer where they have multiple users on their Chrome and it constantly defaults to a parent account up here, it's going to cause them a lot of problems. So what we would suggest telling that student to do would be to open up an Incognito browser in Chrome. How you do this is by either right-clicking on your Chrome browser and pressing New Incognito Window, or on some other computers, you would go up to that File button and press New Incognito Window. When you do that, you can see nobody is logged in up here. So I could go to, am I not sharing? Oh, Google's so smart. It won't let me share an Incognito browser to you guys. So I can't show you.
But that's where you go to do it.
Basically, that's how you would open up an Incognito browser. and you can then go to classroom.google.com. Your students would then be able to log in, or they could go to their portal and log in from there, and it would set off that default so that they weren't being kicked out of the classroom.
Is there any
We
way
do
to-
have a video on Student View. However, there is no way within your Google Classroom that you can see a student view. There's no option to click student view, but the best practice would be just to ask someone to add you as a student to their classroom. So if you want to get familiar with what it looks like from the student's perspective, ask another teacher on your staff to add you into their classroom as a student, and then you can explore, you can try handing things in, doing some projects, and kind of see what it looks like for those students.
I recommended that in the chat earlier.
Any other questions?
Just that we anticipate lots of new updates.
By September, we are anticipating a lot of new updates for Meet. So we have included the new Meet video here in the chat on our YouTube page. However, I'm sure by the time September rolls around, we'll have a brand new one. They are looking to add in things like breakout rooms, raise your hand options, whiteboard options, lots of really unique things. As well, we know in Google Classroom, they want to make some changes to the quiz function and potentially adding some sub tabs under your topics. So we do expect and anticipate that there will be a lot of changes. Don't worry, we will be on top of it and have videos ready to go if those changes do arise. Feel free to ask Mark, Carey, and I any questions that you guys have via email. We are always around to support.
I think
Kevin.
that. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I think that probably brings us to the end today. We'll get you out a little bit early, and that is it for us for our PDs. But definitely check out the GSCS Resource Hub as well as our YouTube page. Please like the YouTube page. That way you'll get notified of all the new videos as we have them. We have been pumping them out pretty regularly, so that would be huge. Most all of the common problems are always solved with the YouTube videos. That's kind of our go-to, how we solve and share problems that we come across. Definitely also check out the new updates, especially the Meet updates are going to be great. It essentially took all the best features of Zoom and they're replicating it, but in a free platform that we have access to that's working quite well for us. So yeah, I think unless there's any other questions, I think the three of us will just stick around and answer if there is. Looks like there's one. Will this be posted? Yes, I will be posting this. When I hit end recording, it usually takes, depending on the length of the movie, half an hour to an hour to render. Then I download it and I'll upload it to our YouTube page as well. So I did upload the one from our morning meeting. Then I'll do the cyber school one and this one. So probably by tonight at some point, this video will be up as well. And yeah, so we'll just be here, answering questions if anybody needs. But other than that, just have a wonderful rest of your day. Anything else, Chandra or Carrie? Perfect. Okay, see you guys.
Okay, so are you talking about, I'll just share my screen here. Just kidding, I am. Are you talking about weekly activities like this? I wouldn't actually add these to my units until the week was over. So if you're thinking about kind of an easy at-a-glance look for students, it's easy for them to see maybe the week's work under your week or under your day even. And when that day is over, then you can just take those activities and drag them to the correct unit that you have. However, keep in mind, I am one person. This is one person's perspective on how to organize a classroom. You can do it lots and lots of different ways. So it's kind of up to you as to what works best with how you're posting and with your students. Again, any other questions, feel free to fire them off at us while we're still here. We'll give you about another 4 or 5 minutes.